mu mwaka wa 2014 ari nabwo icyo kigeranyo cyakozwe ubukerarugendo bwinjirije leta y'u Rwanda cyangwa se u Rwanda muri rusange amadolari y'Amerika angana na miliyoni 303. Ikindi nanone kuba hari ibihugu bya Afrika byagiye bikurirwaho visa mu kwinjira, ibi nabyo byateje imbere ubukerarugendo kuko byanongeye umubare w'abinjira mu Rwanda baje yaba mu bukerarugendo cyangwa se no gusura u Rwanda muri rusange biyongereye ku kigero kigera kuri 70%. Ni byinshi rero umuntu yavuga ku bijyanye n'ubukerarugendo, ariko hanini usanga nyine n'abaje yegwenda usibye ubukerarugendo bushingiye ku nama, hari n'abazana none baje no gusura yaba izo ngagi ndetse n'amaparike atandukanye. Niko wenda umuntu agerageje nyine kugenda tureba amwe mu maraporo atandukanye yagiye ashyirwa hanze cyangwa se yagiye asohorwa bagaragaza yuko nyine ubukerarugendo mu Rwanda kugeza uyu munsi buhagaze neza. Akaba ari nayo mpamvu rero n'iyi nama bahisemo ko ibera mu Rwanda kuri iyi nshuro ya 41 yayo, kugira ngo baze bigire ku Rwanda mu bijyanye n'uburyo ubukerarugendo bwarushaho kugenda butezwa imbere, kubera ko nkuko tubyumva ubukerarugendo habaho kumenya icyo gihugu yego cyakorewemo ubukerarugendo, ariko nanone hakabamo nanone no kwinjiriza ibyo bihugu, ndetse nkuko twagiye tunabibona mu nkuru zitandukanye nuko ayo mafaranga atagarukira gusa muri bije y'igihugu, ahubwo nabo abaturage baturiye za parike, abaturage baturiye ibirunga, nkuko nyine twagiye tugenda tubona abaturage baturiye ahantu nyaburanga hasurwa bagira amafaranga nayo abageraho mu buryo bumwe cyangwa se ubundi, ariko hanini akifashishwa mu kubegereza ibikorwa remezo, imihanda, amavuriro n'ibindi bikorwa remezo bitandukanye, kugira ngo nabo ya mafaranga cyangwa se bwa bukerarugendo nabo bubagirira umumaro mu buryo buhita bugaragara cyangwa se mu buryo bwihuse. Ni wenda ariko umuntu yavuga ni byinshi rero umuntu yavuga kuri ibi, ariko mu mwanya muto turaza noneho gukurikira iyi nama imbona nkubone kuri televiziyo y'u Rwanda, tunagenda tunarushaho no kumva n'izo ngamba zagiye zifatwa, ndetse nanone n'icyo amahanga akwiriye no kwigira ku Rwanda, ndetse n'icyo nanone natwe nk'u Rwanda natwe twakwigira no ku bindi bihugu, kubera yuko nyine abantu ni magirirane. Reka dukomeze kubifuriza kurushaho kunogerwa na gahunda zose televiziyo y'u Rwanda yabateguriye, ariko by'umwihariko iyi nama igiye kubera hano muri Kigali Convention Center. Mukaba muri kumwe nanjye Ngabire Eugenie Bibio, turagaruka mu kanya gato umushyitsi mukuru akaba nabwo agiye kuhagera mu minota mike cyane.
Please join me in welcoming him. Please be seated. Your Excellency, thank you for joining us this morning. Honorable Ministers, Ambassadors, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed, we are honored to have you today at the 41st Annual Tourism Conference, which comes at an exciting time when Rwanda is also hosting the annual gorilla naming ceremony. Your Excellency, the delegates we have in the audience are comprised of ministers from across Africa, industry leaders, key stakeholders, travel professionals, and international investors cutting across different sectors. They are all here to contribute to the development of the tourism sector in their different capacities. To start off the conference, please join me in welcoming the CEO of the Rwanda Development Board, Claire Akamanzi.
Thank you. Your Excellency Paul Kagame, the President of the Republic of Rwanda, thank you for gracing us with your presence today. Ms. Flori Lisa, President and CEO of the Corporate Council on Africa, welcome back to Rwanda. And we are pleased to have you here in your new capacity, and thank you for the great collaboration with us when you were the Assistant U.S. Trade Representative for Africa. Dr. Mukisa Kitui, Secretary General, UN Conference on Trade and Development. It's great to have you back in Rwanda, a month after your latest visit. We hope you maintain this frequency. Your Excellency, Ms. Bax Ruggles, the United States Ambassador to the Republic of Rwanda, thank you for joining us and for your continued collaboration and partnership. Honorable Ministers, business leaders, partners in the tourism industry, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to the 41st edition of the World Tourism Conference that the Rwanda Development Board, on behalf of the government of Rwanda, is privileged to co-host with the Africa Trade Association, which is now under the leadership of the Corporate Council on Africa. I hope that you all enjoyed your travel to Rwanda, and of course, I hope that many of you flew our national airline, Rwandair. If you didn't, that's also fine. But you know what to do next time. This conference, Your Excellency, is particularly important to us because tourism plays a key role in Rwanda's economy. Between 2010 and 2016, our tourism receipts doubled to $404 million, maintaining pole position in Rwanda's foreign exchange earnings. In particular, conferencing and events such as this now contribute over 10% of total tourism earnings. In addition, Rwanda now has 9,900 hotel rooms, up from just 6,500 in 2011. Ladies and gentlemen, we have implemented key policies and programs to catalyze further growth in the sector. Allow me to share with you just three prominent ones. First, under the framework of our partnership with the African parks, we reintroduced new animal species in the Akagera National Park, namely lions and rhinos, which means you can now experience the big five within our borders. Combining this safari experience with trekking gorillas in the Volcanoes National Park, as well as the natural rainforest in Nyungwe National Park, provides a visitor in Rwanda with a unique and diversified experience, all within our borders. Secondly, we guarantee you safety and security when you visit our country. In fact, the World Economic Forum, in its 2017 biannual report, ranks Rwanda one of the global top 10 countries in visitor safety. Third, infrastructure in Rwanda has grown over the last years. New global brands such as Marriott, Radisson, Park Inn, Wilderness Safari, one and only, adorn our new hotels. Furthermore, our national airline Rwandair now flies to 23 destinations in Africa, in Europe, particularly London and Brussels, Mumbai in India, Dubai in the Middle East, and next on our list is Guangzhou in China and New York in the United States, among others. Your Excellency, distinguished guests, let me end by once again welcoming you all and expressing my sincere hope that you will enjoy the deliberations over the next 3 days. I also wish to end by extending an invitation to each of you to our signature ecotourism event, Kwitizina, the gorilla naming ceremony, this Friday on the 1st September. You know, missing such an event when you are already in the country will be one huge mistake. But my colleagues at RGB and I are happy to provide you with any further assistance required. Thank you and welcome once again.
Thank you so much, Claire. Now, this will be the very first time the Africa Travel Association is hosting the conference under the Corporate Council on Africa, our United States Business Association, focused solely on connecting business interests in Africa. And in that regard, please join me in welcoming our next speaker, the President of the Corporate Council on Africa, Flori Lisa.
Thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. Welcome to the 41st Annual World Tourism Conference. First and foremost, though, before I say anything else, Your Excellency, President Paul Kagame, congratulations on your re-election. We are delighted to have you here. I was so pleased to hear that you would join us today in our opening ceremony of this conference. Under your leadership, Rwanda has been a shining example of how you can harness tourism for economic development throughout the continent. You are a shining light for that. So thank you for your leadership here. And we look forward to working with Rwanda as we go forward. We are also so pleased that the Rwanda Development Board agreed to be ATA and CCA's partner in this conference. And so we thank Rwanda Development Board CEO Claire Akamanzi, who we were talking about yesterday. We've known each other since the U.S. and Rwanda were developing the bilateral investment treaty. I don't even know how many years ago that was. We won't tell, Claire. Thank you so much for being our partner here. UNCTAD Secretary General Mukisa Kituyi, to Ambassador Barks Ruggles, ministers whom I had the pleasure of meeting with yesterday of tourism from around the continent. I believe we have 8 ministers here, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I am honored to welcome you all to this 41st Annual World Tourism Conference. As you may know, Corporate Council on Africa, the leading U.S. business association focused on Africa, solely focused on Africa, acquired the Africa Travel Association at the end of 2015. ATA is the leading global travel organization dedicated to Africa tourism and has been around since 1975. ATA was a natural fit for CCA because of our leadership in facilitating business on the continent in various sectors, including infrastructure, agribusiness, energy, health, and trade. And tourism was a natural addition. Tourism is the most inclusive sector and has a significant impact on the continent's economic growth. Additionally, we believe the business opportunities and investment potential within the continent's tourism sector are significant. Considerable opportunities for expansion exist in areas such as medical tourism, educational tourism, business tourism, and more. It's a vast market that holds promise for businesses looking for new markets and opportunities, and CCA and ATA plans to bring its unique business experience to promote the burgeoning sector. Under CCA's new vision and leadership, I would like to affirm our commitment to continuing the promotion of sustainable development of tourism to and within Africa through new initiatives. Some of the new initiatives we plan to launch include ATA Academy, a platform that will focus on capacity building and inclusive growth in African tourism, and ATA Connects, which will focus on increasing investments within the industry through facilitating business-to-business and business-to-government linkages and identifying cross-sectoral opportunities. Under CCA, given our private sector focus, we are changing our engagement with the governments ever so slightly to allow ministries of tourism in Africa to work more closely with the private sector. We plan to hold policy-focused government roundtables throughout the year, bringing private sector companies and government officials together to discuss solutions to challenges faced within the African tourism space. Our goal is to broaden the scope of public-private partnerships for tourism across multiple industries and attract investment to Africa's tourism sector. Through strategic relationships such as both CCA and ATA's MOU with the African Union, and we're delighted today to have Ambassador Chiambori Kwao, who's the African Union Ambassador to the United States, with us. Through that partnership and those MOUs, we are confident that we will achieve our objectives. Our relationship with the AU is just one of many relationships we have across the spectrum that we hope to strengthen in development. Your Excellency, President Kagame, with your leadership role in AU reform, we hope that you will help ATA and our stakeholders to make the case for strong AU support of the African tourism sector. Finally, I want to thank all of you again for coming. We have more than 150 people who have come from across the U.S. and the continent, and thank you all for being here. We're committed to taking what's discussed over the next few days to develop an actionable strategy to unlock Africa's tremendous tourism potential. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Flori. Now, to achieve the economic growth and job creation agenda through tourism, we will definitely need partners, not just in Africa, but also across the globe. And in that regard, ladies and gentlemen, our next speaker is the U.S. Ambassador to Rwanda, Ambassador Erika Bax-Ruggles.
Good morning. Maraho, Your Excellency, President Paul Kagame, honorable ministers, the head of RDB, Ms. Flori Lieser, the head of UNCTAD, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to rely on my favorite phrase in diplomatic terms, all protocol observed. It is a great pleasure to be joining and welcoming you here today to this 41st World Tourism Conference and the first under the Corporate Council on Africa and ATA combined. It's a great initiative, and I can see already that under Flori's leadership, CCA is going to continue being the strong partner they have been for years with the U.S. government. We're pleased to be partners with you, and thank you very much for your leadership on this effort. It is auspicious for us to meet here in Kigali during the United Nations International Year of Sustainable Tourism for Development, just a few days before the Kwita Nzina gorilla naming ceremony, which has become a prominent date on the calendar for tourism here in Rwanda. The mountain gorillas, as many of you know, is a main attraction here. They're a beautiful and important species that I've come to know and love during my time here in Rwanda. In fact, Your Excellency, I think I may even hold the record for being the ambassador with the most trips to the gorillas. I've been 8 times now. And I have to say, I highly recommend it. Go multiple times. I've seen 6 different groups: Sabino, Agasha, Pablo, Amahoro, Kwitondo, and by far the hardest, Susa, which is on the top of Karisimbi. And as such, I have grown to have a deep appreciation for the dedication of the many people who work to ensure the preservation, conservation, and study of these amazing animals. Now, the U.S. has a long history of wildlife tourism and using natural resources for tourism, starting back with the foundation of the Commission on Fish and Fisheries, which is now our U.S. Wildlife Service, in 1871. And that strong commitment towards conservation and tourism extends to our partnership here in Rwanda. And we've been pleased to be partners with them through the years in developing conservation for tourism. Last year, we gave a grant to the NGO Gorilla Doctors to reduce disease transmission between tourists and gorillas, not only here in Rwanda, but because this is a regional population, also in Congo and in Uganda. And also, that grant will help improve real-time the health of not only the gorilla population, but the local population as well, because it will help with water resources. But tourism in Rwanda, as Claire has said, is much more than gorillas. That's what what it's known for here, but there's much more than that. And USAID has worked closely with RDB and the Wildlife Conservation Society, organizing a number of projects on the borders of the Nyungwe National Park, working on biodiversity, ecotourism, but also alternative livelihoods for those who used to be poachers in the park. And we've helped fund the Canopy Bridge, which I hope you all will visit after you go to the Kwita Nzina gorilla ceremony and stay a few extra days here in Rwanda. Now, as you all know, and as Claire has outlined, Rwanda has also become a destination around Africa for conference travel. The African Union was here, the World Economic Forum for Africa came here, and there have been numerous high-level conferences that have taken advantage of this beautiful facility. So I urge you all to take lots of pictures while you're here and advertise that fact. We were talking last night with the Facebook CEO about how to use social media, so I urge you all to hashtag this morning on your Twitter accounts that you're here today. Now, the number of tourists continues to increase dramatically, providing hundreds of millions of dollars, as Claire has outlined, in economic impact in this country, but also in the region. The United States, we are pleased to say, accounts for the single largest source of tourism in Rwanda, as well as the largest single bilateral investment, foreign direct investment country for Rwanda as well. And this is important because your role here is important. As investors in Rwanda, as tourist operators, and as those who are bringing guests and tourists here to Rwanda, you are playing an important role in building the economy here, building the economy globally, and also sustaining conservation of natural resources through tourism and through international exchange. This has been a part of our partnership here with Rwanda, and I'm very proud that we are able to support Rwanda's tourism growth. I look forward to the exchange of ideas that you are undertaking in the next several days at this conference and hearing the outcomes of how we can implement those ideas. Again, it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for your warm welcome, and welcome to Rwanda.
A quick reminder, for those of you who are sharing the conversations online, we are using hashtag ATA Rwanda. Dr. Kitui, it's good to have you back in Rwanda. The last time Dr. Kitui was here just a month ago, he was talking about attracting investors in the region. True to his word, he's back to Rwanda, but this time round to continue conversations on tourism. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Dr. Mokisa Kitui, the Secretary General of ACTAD.
Your Excellency President Paul Kagame, my friend and the new President of Corporate Council of Africa, Flori, Claire, the Excellency Ambassador of the U.S., Excellencies, Honorable Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, it is true that Rwanda is almost becoming my second home. I was sharing with Claire that I should retain a residence here. And I'm very happy to come here often. Your Excellency, thank you very much for patronizing this occasion. You continue to lead by example, and I join Flori in congratulating you on your re-election. It's very important, not just for the region, but for the whole continent. And I want to congratulate the Corporate Council of Africa for getting the best CEO they could get. They could never. The short 15 years that Flori and I have interacted, I have known that she will be the best person that could bridge the relationship between corporate America, official, and corporate Africa. And we look very much forward to working with you on this. This conference is coming at a very exciting time for some of us. 2 years since the coming into force of the Sustainable Development Goals initiative, countries have to take stock of what is going to keep the promises they made of leaving no one behind, inclusive prosperity, banishing extreme poverty. In the basement years of Africa's own ambitious Agenda 2063, political and corporate Africa have to start saying, how do we stem the shame of Africans drowning in the Mediterranean? By creating livelihoods at home, by keeping our young and enterprising occupied gainfully for themselves and for the continent. A recent history has shown that the services industry, more than the traditional other sectors, is a major source of creative and sustainable employment creation. And the tourism sector is a very important cornerstone of the services industry on this continent. For us in the United Nations family, the year 2017 is dedicated as the United Nations Year for Sustainable Tourism for Development. And on the basis of that, my organization, in our Economic Development in Africa annual report for 2017, we dedicated it to the topic of tourism for transformative and inclusive growth. And it was a very rewarding experience for us going through getting to understand the dynamics of the tourist sector, the potential, the players, and what role it can play as we seek to create livelihoods, to harvest the dividend of Africa's demography. I will share some of the statistics of this in my brief remarks, but most fundamentally, I wanted to say, official Africa receives much more from the tourist sector than it appreciates. We still are stuck in a mode where public budgets are disproportionately going to traditional areas but with limited dynamism, with less assured potential for creating sustainable employment, with less capacity for bridging the gender gap than what we see in the services. Globally, the services industry is much, much more gender positive than a traditional manufacture, for example. And that's not different with tourism. In our own study, we see a number of interesting trends. That indeed, tourism in Africa has been growing substantially, rising just over the past decade from 6 to 8% of gross domestic product. Similarly, revenues from the turn of the century have increased 3 times from $14 to $47 billion. And tourism-related exports have grown exponentially from 14 to upwards of $50 billion US. International arrivals have been increasing impressively, 24 million to 56 million over the past 15 years, and growing and counting. But the most startling and interesting discovery in our study is that by far the fastest growing tourism in Africa is intra-African tourism, movement of tourists from one African region to another. As the ambassador of the US mentioned, there are very many different components and positives about intra-African tourism. One, it is not seasonal. Intra-African tourism is 12 months a year. Conference tourism, medical tourism, educational tourism, and business visits. That this sustains the hotel industry much, much better than the tourism which comes when it is off-season for northern tourism. And we've seen just over the past 10 years, intra-African tourism grow from 34% to 44% of the total number of tourists in Africa. The projection is that it will be more than 50% in the next 10 years. But there are a number of challenges that we must confront. First of all, the traditional attitude of the hospitality industry is a tourist is that European, American, and more recently Chinese arriving. And you struggle to impress them. Sometimes you look at the African tourists like a distraction in the way of tourist industry. Even the messaging about our destination, we talk to an audience other than the growing audience of tourists that come to us. I think it's incumbent upon Africa to find the reality that you cannot grow your efficiencies as destinations of tourism unless you start embracing and appreciating seriously that those African visitors are your main tourists of the future. While we are celebrating that we're almost touching 50% of our tourists, know that the global average, away from island tourist destinations, the global average is that intracontinental tourists account for 80% of all tourists. I have been living in Switzerland for the past 4 years, and the largest tourist constituency in Switzerland are Swiss. People from Switzerland moving from one town to another for different purposes are seen and appreciated as the main tourists. The rest of you come as supplementary to the main tourists. There is another challenge. Africa has a phenomenal capacity to deepen the value chain of the tourist industry. You continue to import Evian water from Lake Geneva, which is not in any way better than the Inyanza water from Kigali. But because you have been given the impression that the tourists like Evian, even for the tourists coming from Uganda, you are serving them with Evian. There are a number of other challenges that have to take the responsibility of political leaders. The first one, there is a symbiotic relationship between peace and tourism. Tourism feeds on peace, and sometimes peace is driven by tourism. When I was here last month with Alibaba CEO, Jack Ma, President Kagame told us a very interesting story about the gorillas who have traditionally moved between Uganda, Rwanda, and Congo. But because of unequal development of peace in the neighborhood, they are tending to stay longer in the more peaceful area than in the other areas. So they desire to have more revenues because of creating circumstances, the ecosystem for the gorillas to survive, obliges the politicians to seek additional value why they should invest in peace. Similarly, the dynamics of Africa's tourism could be totally different if the violence that has informed political conduct in many parts of this continent had not been such a dominant force for us. It gives our adversaries an excuse to point at Africa as a violent place, but it also definitely slows down the growth of both domestic and international tourism. Third, Africa's own perception of what is newsworthy in Africa. I live in France and I live in Switzerland and I've lived in Europe 14 of my most adult years. And what I see as a phenomenon is if there's a terrorist phenomenon, for example, the first thing to say we should not let terrorists succeed and defeat us is to show solidarity that we can enforce peace again. When there was a problem of bombing in Paris, world leaders went to Paris to work together to show that Paris is welcome for tourists. When there is a tourist incident in Africa, it is the main incident reported in the media, African media, for the next 3 years. Africa's own peace building is insufficiently utilized. Similarly, African leaders find it much easier to relax visa requirements for European and American visitors than for African visitors. When you go to Europe, you find the fast lane for Europeans in any European country. When you come to Africa, you find, apart from citizens, the fastest lane is for Europeans. And the slowest, most cumbersome lane is for Africans. Now, this is not how to build a confidence that this is the main milk cow that we are growing as a tourist destination, unless we go through that mental change. I have spoken for too long. I just wanted to emphasize that we find a narrative about paying adequate collective attention to the services sector, prioritizing open skies between African countries, giving due recognition and decency to the regulations to roll back the restrictive visa regimes that dominate our countries, and seeing how to use the skilling up that comes with tourism, the young men and women who learn new talents that spill over to other services as critical to our economies beyond the traditional narrative about food security, about heavy industrialization, that we'll find a way of complementing other efforts in realizing our aspirations for future prosperity. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Dr. Kitui, for your remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, at this point, we will be hearing from our guest of honor, President Paul Kagame. Your Excellency, it's my honor to invite you to give your keynote address.
Thank you. Good morning. First, President and CEO of the Corporate Council on Africa, Dr. Mukisa Kitui, Secretary General of the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, honorable ministers and senior government officials, yes, Ambassador, executives from the travel and tourism sector, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Let me start by welcoming you, particularly those who have traveled here from abroad. I hope you will have a productive and enjoyable stay with us. I would like to thank the Corporate Council on Africa through the African Travel Association, together with the Rwanda Development Board, for organizing this 41st World Tourism Conference. I also take this opportunity to congratulate Lisa on your new position at the Council, and wish you every success as you take on this important role. In fact, I think I knew Lisa before everyone, as mentioned earlier. Rwanda, like the countries, other countries on the continent, is keen to convert our favorable demographics into economic growth and prosperity. The services sector, in particular tourism, provides some of the best opportunities for employment for our citizens and attractive careers for young people. Already this sector is Rwanda's biggest foreign exchange earner. Claire gave figures, but we can and should do better. Harnessing the full potential of tourism industry will require continued focus and investment on several fronts. First, the efforts we are making in strengthening good governance and mobilizing our population enables us to properly manage both the environment and support tourist attractions, as well as the revenue they generate. Rwandans, especially those living around parks and other attractions, have become indispensable to conservation. This is because they understand the value of our natural resources and benefit directly from incomes and community projects financed by park revenues. The responsibility of government and other players in the industry is to continuously provide quality education and professional training so that Rwandans can fully participate as professionals in tourism and associated sectors. Second, we are investing heavily in services and infrastructure to support the development of the sector. Our national career, Rwandair, continues to expand to destinations within Africa and beyond, and will soon have a more modern, efficient base when the new airport in Bugesera is completed. We are also working to improve the road network and attract investments in conference and hotel facilities, such as this convention center we are in today. Third, we must take full advantage of new technologies, particularly innovative digital platforms to attract more visitors, offer new experiences, and provide better services. I'm happy to learn that several technology companies are represented here today. We look forward to partnering with you to take the industry to the next level. As we work with the private sector to develop the tourism sector in Rwanda, we also want to strengthen collaboration within our region and across the continent. The single tourist visa and passport-free travel with Kenya, between Kenya, Rwanda, and Uganda is already a reality. So is a visa on arrival in Rwanda for all Africans. So we had your concerns much earlier, Dr. Kitui. Here in Rwanda, we have no such a problem. But we need more cooperation on the continent in order to increase the numbers of visitors as well as facilitate trade and investment within Africa. Implementing existing agreements on open skies and easing visa restrictions are steps in the right direction. I trust that you will discuss these and other pertinent issues during this conference. We look forward to working with you on solutions to advance tourism in Africa and beyond. I thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, this now marks the end of this morning's opening session. Your Excellency, thank you once again for gracing us with your presence. I would now like to request the rest of our guests to remain seated as our guest of honor departs. Thank you all and have a pleasant day. Welcome to Rwanda once again. And I hope we're sharing the conversations with the rest of our friends who were not able to attend the opening session. And I hope we, at least all of us next time, fly Rwanda. Okay, 80% of us. So the next session is Unlocking Africa's Tourism Potential, and the moderator of this particular session is Judy Nokedi, the Chief Operating Officer of Tourvest. Please join me in welcoming the moderator and the panelists.
ngibyo rero nyine ibyatangarizwaga muri iyi nama n'ubundi igiye no gukomeza kubera hano muri Kigali Convention Center, ariko nyakubahwa Perezida wa Repubulika nyine akamaze kubagezaho ijambo nyamukuru yari yabateguriye kuri uyu munsi, aho mu by'ukuri cyari kigamijwe byari kurebera hamwe uburyo ubukerarugendo bwatezwa imbere atari gusa mu Rwanda ahubwo ku rwego rwa Afurika, ku rwego rw'isi muri rusange, uburyo ubukerarugendo bwatezwa imbere. Havugiwe byinshi rero, ariko bimwe nyine mu byo bagendaga bavuga, Florizel akaba ari umuyobozi wa Corporate Council on Africa, we rero yishimiraga urwego ubukerarugendo bwo mu Rwanda bumaze kugeraho. Navuga yuko nanone anishimira nanone ibyagiye bikorwa, byagiye bishyirwa mu bikorwa ku buryo uyu munsi abantu benshi cyangwa se n'amahanga yifuza kuza nyine kugirira ubukerarugendo mu Rwanda. Nkuko rero nyine nanone twari tumaze kuvuga, bagiye bavuga ijambo, bagiye bafata ijambo hano. Nka US ambassador yavuze yuko yishimira kuva yaba ambassador wa Amerika mu Rwanda, yishimira ko amaze kwitabira kwita izina inshuro 8. Akaba rero nyine anishimira nawe urwego ubukerarugendo bwo mu Rwanda bumaze kugenda bugeraho. Anavuga ariko ati ubukerarugendo mu Rwanda ntago twavuga gusa ko ari ukwita izina cyangwa se gorilla, ingagi muri rusange. Ati birenze ibyo ngibyo kuko hari inama zo ku rwego rw'isi, hari inama zo ku rwego rwo hejuru cyane zagiye zibera hano mu Rwanda, kandi nanone hakaba hari n'ahandi hantu nyaburanga henshi hatandukanye ho gusurwa. Umuyobozi w'ishami ry'umuryango w'abibumbye rinafite mu nshingano zaryo ubukerarugendo, nawe akaba yishimiye rero nyine ibyo u Rwanda rumaze gukora no gushyira mu bikorwa kugira ngo bateze imbere ubukerarugendo, avuga ko muri rusange icyo bishimira nanone ari uko u Rwanda usanga wenda nk'ibibazo bigenda bigaragara ahandi, aho abantu usanga nyine batitabira ubukerarugendo bubera mu gihugu cyabo, ariko mu Rwanda nyine akavuga yuko bisa n'ibitandukanye n'ibyo ngibyo. Hanyuma rero nanone nyakubahwa perezida wa Repubulika nawe akaba yavuze bimwe cyangwa se byinshi bitandukanye mu byagiye bikorwa mu rwego rwo guteza imbere ubukerarugendo, avuga ko guverinoma y'u Rwanda ifite mu nshingano gushyiraho n'ayo mahugurwa, gufasha abantu batandukanye bakora mu by'ubukerarugendo kugira ngo abanyarwanda muri rusange babashe nabo kubigiramo uruhare. Ikindi nanone yavuze yuko ubukerarugendo bwagiye buteza imbere cyane, bwagiye bugira nabwo uruhare mu guteza imbere igihugu. Avuga yuko nyine usibye wenda no kuba haba tourism cyangwa se abantu bakagenda basura, ahubwo uru rwego rw'ubukerarugendo narwo nyine rwagiye rutanga imirimo ku banyarwanda benshi batandukanye, kandi nanone rukanafasha mu guteza imbere igihugu. Ikindi nanone yavuze yuko abaturiye za parike cyangwa se ahantu nyaburanga nabo bagenda bibandwaho cyane kugira ngo barusheho kubateza imbere, hariya biriya byo baturiye nabyo birusheho nyine kubinjiriza, nk'uko nyine nyakubahwa perezida wa Repubulika yakomeje abivuga. Ariko nk'uko twabibabwiye n'ubundi iyi nama irakomeza, hagenda hareberwa muri rusange icyakorwa kugira ngo uru rwego rw'ubukerarugendo narwo rubashe nyine kurushaho gutera imbere, runakomeza no guteza imbere ubukerarugendo ibihugu bigiye birimo muri rusange. Ikindi nanone no kurushaho no guteza imbere, kugaragaza ishusho nyayo, isura nyayo ya Afurika ntikomeze kumenyerwa gusa wenda ku bibazo biba bihari, ahubwo hakanagaragazwa yuko hashobora nyine gukorerwa ubukerarugendo, kandi nanone nyine hakarushaho kuba hatezwa imbere. Ibigiye gukomeza kwigirwa muri iyi nama rero ni ukurushaho kureba muri rusange, ese hakorwa iki kugira ngo uru rwego rw'ubukerarugendo rurusheho gutera imbere kandi rurusheho no guteza imbere ibihugu muri rusange. Nyakubahwa perezida wa Repubulika akaba yanavuze yuko hanashyizweho, horoherejwe abanyafurika uburyo nyine bashobora kwinjira mu gihugu mu buryo bworoshye kugira ngo nyine nabo biborohere kuza mu gihugu. Hakaba ari naho bidasabwa yuko bagomba kuba bari bafite izo visa, hari n'abaza bakazifatira kuri airport, bakazifata bamaze kwinjira mu gihugu. Ni byinshi rero umuntu yavuga, ariko ikigiye gukomeza kigirwa hano ni ukurebera hamwe muri rusange uburyo uru rwego rw'ubukerarugendo rwarushaho gutezwa imbere. Ambassador wa Amerika rero akaba nyine mu byo yavuze, we yishimira ko amaze gusura ingagi inshuro zigera ku 8 nk'uko nawe yabyivugiye, avuga ati iki ni ikimenyetso kigaragaza umutekano uri mu gihugu, kigaragaza iterambere riba riri mu gihugu. Nanone rero ko umuyobozi w'ishami ry'umuryango w'abibumbye rinafite mu nshingano ubukerarugendo, akaba yanavuze yishimira yuko n'ubundi ngo ingagi zimenya ahantu hari umutekano, ngo ugasanga kwa kundi wenda zishobora kuba zava mu gihugu kimwe zijya ahandi, zimenya hari umutekano zikabasha kuhatinda. Byinshi rero umuntu yavuga, ariko turaza kubareka mukomeze gukurikira iyi nama muri rusange.
Normally when we host meetings in the travel and tourism industry, you can have up to 2,000 to 5,000 guests. So this is an opportunity for us to listen very intimately to the leaders of unlocking the potential that this industry has to grow the economies, to create more jobs, to drive development, and to strive towards regional integration. What then are the transformative economic imperatives that these honourable members, ministers and deputy ministers of our continent need to do in order to unlock Africa's new gold, Africa's new diamonds, Africa's new chrome, Africa's new iron ore, Africa's new platinum, because tourism is the new commodity that will lead us to greater heights as we prepare our future for the next generations. But more importantly, tourism too is a tool for tolerance, and we are going to be unpacking this more as we go through the sessions this morning. Nobody will be making speeches, nobody will be talking for more than 3 minutes at a time, and I'm sure that in the audience, especially those of you who are under 35, will find this rather refreshing. So I'm going to start in no particular order and ask, no, actually let me start in the middle, so it's 3, so let's see, who shall I start with, audience? Who would you like me to begin with? Who shall I fire the first question to? Cape Verde? Any other takers? Who should I ask first? Zimbabwe? No, I need some more support. Anyway, I think we should go with Sierra Leone. So, Honourable Minister, what I'd like you to do as the panel is firstly address this question of what has been the highlights of your term as the Minister in this particular portfolio. The highlights. Give me 2, please.
Thank you very much. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very excited to be in Rwanda. This is my very first visit. And I must say that I've been Minister for Tourism and Cultural Affairs just a little over a year, 17 months to be precise. And I came in at a time when our country has just come out of the Ebola crisis, and I happen to have been the spokesperson of the Ebola response, so I was in the middle of the whole response. When I was appointed minister, my president, His Excellency Dr. Ernest Bai Koroma, told me that your sector is like a sleeping lion. He said you need to wake him up and you need to move fast. And he said to me again that you were in the middle of the response, so who better lead the transformation of our economy in our country? So for me, I knew that I had to be very fast in transforming the tourism sector. So the highlight for my tenure for this year, I can summarize in 2. 1, reforms. I was able, with my team, to introduce a lot of reforms, focusing on institutional and regulatory frameworks. We knew that for the sector to thrive, we needed sound policies, we needed sound regulations, we needed sound reforms, and so we focused on developing tourism policies, ecotourism policies, reviewing the Tourism Development Acts because they were obsolete, and also reviewing the Monuments and Relics Act so that we strengthen our cultural and our historical heritage, which are also key parts of developing tourism in the country. And then we also focus pretty much on our capacity building. So not only within the ministry itself, but the sector as a whole. Tourism is a very competitive business. And so for you to really be able to thrive, you have to ensure that the capacity within the sector is well built. So we were very much able to achieve that. And also investing in infrastructure.
I asked for 2 highlights, so I would like you not to cover the entire value chain because the other ministers also have to. But in your 17 months, you've highlighted 2 issues which are critical, and that is capacity and policy. May I now move to a little island, a beautiful island off the west coast? Interestingly, audience, what I found very interesting is that Cape Verde has been ranked number 83, outperforming many other African countries with 519,000 arrivals. So, Minister Gonçalves, share with us how you reach a ranking of 83 with a relatively small number of international passengers. What indeed have been your highlights?
Colleague ministers, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for this opportunity to be here and share with you some of our experiences. I think that Cabo Verde, we are fortunate to be blessed being in a strategic geographical location in West Africa, at the Eastern Atlantic, blessed by beautiful beaches, wonderful pristine seas, and also open to the international community. I think that we're a latecomer, relatively speaking, to the tourism business, but we do have many comparative advantages that we're working very hard to transform into competitive advantages. I think people came to Cabo Verde because they found the uniqueness that country had to offer in terms of its people, in terms of its outward and outgoing personality, and in terms of being very hospitable environment, safe and secure and healthy. And all these really spelled pretty much, the attraction which tourists find, mainly from Europe, found in Cabo Verde. The 2 key things that we are working on in leveraging this comparative advantage into competitive advantages is now to increase mobility. We are in the process of creating an air hub that we believe will not only serve and support Cabo Verde tourism development, but also will serve not only the ECOWAS region of 15 nations in the ECOWAS region, as we reach to various markets from the 4 continents that really that will link into this air hub. We 2 weeks ago signed an agreement that it's already in place now with a major operator in air hub. So we're very proud of this, and like I said, we'll help Cabo Verde as well as Africa. Next, I think also an issue that was raised here earlier is the question of access, visa access and facilitation. Cabo Verde is in the process now of exempting visa for tourists from the main source markets. And we already, of course, as you know, Cabo Verde, all the ECOWAS 15-country community are exempt of visa entry for tourism visa in Cabo Verde. We're extending this now to all the major tourist market, while also reinforcing, of course, our border control. We will be automating tremendously the capacity to process passports going through in a matter of seconds and not a matter of minutes and hours, certainly. And that's going to be tremendous to really increase the mobility of tourists, and as we look forward to implementing this. Thank you.
Wonderful. So now I'm going to move to our first female on the panel, and there are 2, so it's a case of I'm tossing here, but I'm going to go to Minister Xhaza. So we've heard from your two colleagues around the importance of policy, the importance of having a competitive advantage and a unique selling proposition. Connectivity in terms of airlifting is crucial. So, Minister, you are on the southern tip of the continent. We've just moved from top left of the continent to the southern tip, where long haul often can be seen as a deterrent to travel, or it makes you even more competitive. But I'd like you to share with us your experiences, Minister. A key metric in the competitiveness of the sector is the role of government and the role of the private sector. Could you share with us your highlights in your tenure? I have a little bit of an insight here in terms of the competition between who is the newest minister. Sierra Leone, 17 months. Maybe kick off with Minister Xasa in terms of your appointment as minister, and then address these two issues of the role of government and how you work with the public sector to leverage and harness investment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's so difficult to really explain how long I have been minister, but it's a story for another day. I've been with the industry from 2009, and thank you very much, Judy. I just want to say we are fortunate in South Africa in that government in 2009 put the Department of Tourism as a standalone department in order to focus on tourism, which has been a growing sector of the economy, so that there's special focus and we are able to really, make it thrive and make people to participate. And when we started developing our tourism sector strategy, we sat with the industry, we developed it. It has been running, it's in its 10th year now, and we are reviewing it together with the industry. So in every strategy and policy gaps that are there, we sit down with the industry. That has worked, and it is still working moving forward. So government continues to play a very prominent role to make it easy for the industry to function. So the highlights that I can also add on is it assists us to really also be able to focus as government on what specifically we need to do. We have an agency that looks into marketing and promotion of the country, and that agency, in terms of its work, of which Judy is part of its board, it works and ensures that South Africa is marketed both domestically and international to also shape the kind of traditional focus of where we would be selling South Africa internationally only. We are focusing to ensure that we have a sustainable tourism through building or growing domestic tourism. So the issues of growing tourism, besides looking into how we grow it within the country, we are also looking into how we grow it within Africa, because government itself made it its own mandate to contribute to a better Africa and a better world. So issues of access, issues of visas, issues of pricing continue to be issues that we are looking and grappling with. In South Africa alone, 70% of our tourists come from Africa. So it becomes a very critical market, and that continues to be an issue because we are grappling with issues of poor infrastructure, less visited areas, and we also are, grappling with issues of political will when it comes to the issues of opening skies so that we can have the connectivity that is required.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think we've got some support in the room for South Africa. I'd like to turn now to a country that in many ways is seen as the panacea, or one of the countries that have taught so many other countries, or that so many other countries have learned from. It is a country that has a magnificent river that flows through it. So I can see the ministers now deciding which country this is. And it is a country that many of the tourist iconic products are shared across border. So I'd like this minister to talk about how you manage and how you have successfully managed regional integration. And I'm sure now the minister knows who this is coming to. And that is the Honorable Mzembe, Minister of Tourism and Hospitality for the Republic of Zimbabwe, in terms of how you've done regional integration. I know it's so fantastic. You can decide to do a bungee jump in Zambia. You can bungee jump in Zimbabwe. We can't quite swing across, but your river boating takes you. We love it. We call it Zim-Zam Bots. So it's Zimbabwe, Zambia, Namibia, and Botswana. So, Minister, share with us how you have managed at a geopolitical level regional integration.
Well, first and foremost, if I may just recast it to highlights of the career of this minister in terms of regional integration. Many of you would know that the world's most coveted tourism gathering, which is the United Nations World Tourism Organization General Assembly, which comes to any country in terms of opportunity to host it once every 300 years, was hosted between Zimbabwe and Zambia in 2013 at the Victoria Falls, a very classic example of regional integration in terms of co-hostessship of that General Assembly. But it was hosted within the Victoria Falls, which in itself is the capital city or the capital destination of the Kavango Zambezi Transfrontier Conservation Area, which brings together Zimbabwe, Zambia, Angola, Namibia, and Botswana, in itself constituting arguably the globe's largest biodiversity enclave. So in terms of integrating flora, fauna, our wildlife in that area do not know boundaries. They move freely from one country to the other. And we have not just integrated tourism products, we have integrated even our wildlife, resulting in a classic destination of 52 tourism activities, 7 international airports, and 5 countries. That's the product that we offer in sub-Saharan Africa and Southern Africa. A fine example of regional integration. But let me also add that Zimbabwe is a central player within what we call RITOSA, the Regional Tourism Organization of Southern Africa, bringing together 15 countries, and we sell that sub-Saharan product as one, joining all the iconic attractions, starting from Table Mountain in South Africa to the Mandela Roots, going into Mozambique, the Transfrontier Conservation Area that brings Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and South Africa, into Botswana, to Zambia, going forward to Angola, Namibia. I can't think of any product in Africa that best represents regional integration than the Regional Tourism Organization of Southern Africa.
Great. We don't have Kenya and Tanzania here, so it would have been interesting to draw the contrast there. But let's walk across the river to Zambia, to you, Dr. Mutale. Maybe you would like to expand on the highlights around regional integration and maybe expand it a little bit further into technical cooperation, which leads to increased capacity building, better systems, better processes, better policies. Over to you, Dr. Mutale.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to the conveners of this meeting. We appreciate. I think as Honorable Mzembe has said, so far I think the CASA group has been a very good example of regional integration.
Maybe you could unpack that for the audience who's not familiar with it, the group?
Yes.
Please.
That's the 5 countries that were mentioned: Angola, Botswana, Namibia, Zimbabwe, and Zambia. We work with support from cooperating partners, especially the German government has been supportive. And in that program, it's integrated with several different programs, including capacity building and also equipment and also infrastructure development within the Kaza region. Specifically for Zambia, Sio Mangwezi National Park has benefited a lot in this regional arrangement, and going forward, we are working together to see how we can continue to develop in the different 5 countries different programs that have come up. For instance, there's a discussion around a golf tournament that is going to take place in the different countries and end up in one of the countries every year for the final. So we are really looking forward to the new programs that are coming up.
Wonderful, thank you. If I can now, we will hear from our last panelist, but we won't, this is not the last we will hear from him. He's very passionate about the issues of transformation and how you take countries when we're looking at domestic travel, how do you develop, grow, inculcate the culture of travel and tourism? So, Deputy Minister of Environment and Tourism, if you could comment on some of the transformation challenges in Namibia, and also comment on why you are a Minister of Environment and Tourism, the motivation, the rationale that's left Namibia having a combined ministry, and later on maybe Minister Gonzalez, you can also talk about how you've hubbed economy and employment, but we're going to hear now from Honourable Deputy Minister Nambau from the Republic of Namibia.
Thank you very much, and good morning, colleagues. I'm very much delighted to be here and very much passionate to talk about this subject of tourism. Yes, to your question of transforming and all that. You know, our Constitution talks about the mandate that the state has towards the protection of environment. And for that matter, tourism has to a certain extent been overshadowed by that obligation, which is a constitutional obligation. So our drawing from that, it has been now our main focus to mainstream the activities of tourism and bring it to the front burner. And that includes, and as a mission upon us, to educate the policymakers, to educate the lawmakers, the country's leadership, to actually see tourism as one of the main activities. We have a plan in the country called NDP, National Development Plan, that runs for 5 years. And tourism has been identified as one of the main activities of economic development in the country. So therefore, we have to mainstream it and also transform it. Transform it in the sense that henceforth, you know, in our culture, tourism has always been seen as something for other people, not mainly for the indigenous. But knowing that we have to grow tourism for domestic purpose, also for national integration and for nation building, we have to mobilize the resources so that we have domestic tourism that is developing. Domestic tourism in such a sense that we are a republic that is young, a republic that has come from a past of racial segregation. We understand it that we have to make people know each other. We understand it that we have to make people socially integrate. And in that sense, we have to develop products and magnets in the different corners of the country, making that what we call geographic spread over the various corners of the country. So that tourism is not only concentrated in certain areas, but each and every corner of our country enjoys this kind of development. It is therefore very much important for us, the aspect of transformation, bringing those that have been hitherto left out. Indigenization of the industry, making it democratic, making others Those, we have the Himbas, for example, one of the culturally marginalized people in the apartheid dispensation. The past, they have only benefited from, people coming and take pictures about them, but not them benefiting actually from tourism activities as such and having the benefits. So we make it our passion, we make it our goal to actually mainstream and benefit these kind of people. And by selling Namibia actually also in what we call solidarity, including other people that have not been there, and also extending the integration to other countries like Angola, who have just emancipated from the war and actually...
Great. I think you've summed up this session perfectly, because I started off by talking about tourism as the new gold, the new commodity. And when you use the wording indigenization, I think the lessons there for tourism ministers, not only on the panel, but in Africa, is to ensure that we safeguard another asset which is not under the ground. Some of it is under the ground, but we're now moving to an Africa where we mine above the ground. So indigenization, localization, equity, ownership, these are key challenges that we hope you will take away from Rwanda and apply your minds as to how you ensure that the beneficiation of tourism does not vest offshore. I want to move to a different question now, a different set of challenges. We like to deal with issues of airlift, connectivity, visa regime, but I want to shift the debate into a series of changes that are happening in the sector. And so I'm going to start with Zimbabwe. Yesterday's tourist is not the tourist of tomorrow. Yesterday's tourist is not the tourist of tomorrow. You have a demographic profile globally and on the continent of younger travelers, huge capacity there, mobility of young people. What are your thoughts around, because you're dealing with a current challenge, but you're dealing with the challenge of tomorrow. And I'm going to leave the question with Zambia and Zimbabwe around what is your thinking around the baby boomer or the millennial, and how are you going to leverage the value of the spend in terms of the tourist of tomorrow, the traveler of tomorrow?
Well, by 2050, there will be 2.4 billion people in Africa, 50% of whom will be under the age of 25. Naturally presenting this opportunity that has been captured this year by the African Union in its celebration of 2017 as the year of the youth, harnessing the youth dividend. So going forward into the future, we obviously have to recognize these demographic trends, that they are going to spawn an opportunity of younger travelers who are obviously equipped socially differently. And I think the issue of an ICT-enabled Africa, whose current teledensity is around 92%. If I speak on behalf of Zimbabwe, our ICT penetration rate is 120%. We are speaking to a totally different market that will be using social tools to communicate. I think we are going forward into the age of virtual reality, where some of them may not even travel before they actually experience the product on their applicators, on their telephones or cell phones, and then making the decision to travel only after they've acquainted themselves with the images and footages of destinations on the applicator. So it's a disruptive world going forward into the future, but one that also offers an opportunity. But is this the prime traveling class that tourism is targeting? Yes, no. It is a class maybe that may be less equipped in terms of disposable income. So we have to design products that answer their means and affordability, budget products that can move our youth dividend across the continent. And that's one area that we'll obviously be looking at. We have also to answer how we communicate with them, and I raised this technological statistics and characteristics of this youth dividend, that it will speak lesser through the conventional means that we have known in the past, but more socially media active, to the extent where we have to design.
So, Minister, do you work very closely with your Minister of Telecoms, the ministries that are driving expansion of broadband, that can deal with it's old systems, yet there are new ways of doing business. And maybe I can ask your colleague and your counterpart from Zambia to comment on that in terms of, again, looking at the future. The baby boomers are quite savvy. So, baby boomers come to the rescue, but it's again an opportunity for us to prepare for the next wave. And I think very often, like with Sierra Leone, there was not the opportunity to prepare. We know that things are changing. There is disruption. There is new technology. So let's not get caught on the back foot in a mine shaft, but let's be sure that we have aerial views with snazzy drones and helicopters as we map out our future, because the technology is here. It's not being created. Doctor?
Yes, thank you very much. I think for us, moving forward in our 7th National Development Plan, we've decided to move forward not as sectors, but as clusters. So meaning that since tourism has been prioritized as one of the 3 major income earners for the government, a lot will be focused on what it is tourism wants to do and who plays a role in that. So issues of ICT definitely are looked into. We've already developed an app that is still being worked on. We are working together with the University of Zambia to see how we can satisfy that group of young people. Of course, Facebook, social media, I think that's a platform that we are also using, WhatsApp, because we know these are the platforms that the young people are accessing. And then again, on the other hand, we're also looking at, like the Honorable Minister said, affordable activities and adventures that young people can, and safe ones, in terms of also transport. How will they get from one place to another? Is it transport that they can afford? Is it safe transport? So those are the kinds of issues that we are looking at, working with other sectors.
Right. Now, moving to Cape Verde, and I'd like to talk about the challenge of connectivity, open skies, etc. You have chosen probably a sweet spot for Cape Verde. Maybe it's not so sweet. I don't know. You're about to tell us around a space that is highly competitive. Quite, a key to connectivity, yet the regulations are extremely onerous and stuck in an age that I can't even comment on. And you are going to be taking on competitor airlines and competitor hubs. Admittedly, Ethiopia's on the other side of you, and then you've got all your Gulf state carriers. Share with us a little bit about the thinking and how you are managing to navigate a very tough terrain around aviation.
Well,
were you a pilot before?
No, I have not been, but I'm fast learning. No, I think that in today's aviation business, it's a very competitive, certainly, but highly technical, and it takes many parts. Now, fortunately, Cabo Verde, for several years, or over 10 years, has been working slowly, in fact, with the U.S. FAA, which helped us to certify the country as Category 1. That means your Civil Aviation Authority has to be up to par, your airports have to be certified and secure, and your airlines also have to have the proper credentials certification so that, for example, one can travel from Cabo Verde to the U.S., the most demanding of the markets, or Europe. Now, by having invested over a decade in creating this capacity, we are now at the point, and by the way, very few countries in Africa are at this stage. We hope more will be there, but very few countries of the 55 really have this wherewithal in place. So that's why we think we have somewhat of a first mover advantage by harnessing all these investments made over time, and now how shall I say, promoting it in this competitive sector. So we are in a sweet spot in that we're in a 300 million population neighborhood of all 15 countries in the ECOWAS region. As we know, it's not easy to get from Cabo Verde here. I had to go through Europe, and it took me 2 days. What we'd like to do is to be able, and even within the countries in the West Africa community of the 15 countries, it is tremendously difficult. What we like to do, having the conditions nationally, we also now, through the Yamoussoukro agreement in terms of travel between countries and the preferences, we hope now to extend this service, not only to have Cabo Verde, how shall I say, fan out outside to the markets of Europe, but also to look to Africa, the entire corridor, all the way from Luanda, which we have very close relationship, through all the West Africa. And how can we be able to provide a service that also helps the continent while helping Cabo Verde at the same time?
So I'm going to now move to jobs, and even more jobs. And with the opportunity of jobs come the mining of talent. So I'm going to ask Minister Xhosa and Namibia to comment on the challenges around, for every 30 tourists, one new job is created. It used to be 10. Economists have challenged that idea that for every 10 tourists there's one job. I now have it on from fairly reliable sources in terms of economists that it is in results of 2016 research that 30 new tourists create one job. Minister Xhosa, you've been having some interesting pilots with China and Russia in the space of jobs, so that as you enter those source markets, the tourists arriving in South Africa, those working at front ends are able to deal with a source market that does not speak English. But you don't have to talk about that. Namibia, you have the advantage. Germany loves Southern Africa. Lots of Namibians speak German. So I'd like the two countries to talk about jobs, the future, what kinds of jobs, and the talent that's required to service the industry.
Thank you very much once more, Judy. Indeed, South Africa today boasts that this is one sector that creates the much needed jobs and has been resilient over the years. At the moment, we are recording about 1.5 million direct jobs as the industry. And critical in making sure that we continue to create these much needed jobs is on understanding the tourist who comes to our shores, be able to communicate and then offer the best experience that is required, and therefore the investment that needs to go in with that. We prioritize skills development, working with the sector to identify what skills are needed, and also even gave incentives to ensure that our establishments are graded so that we can ensure value for money. So we have language training that is targeting our key markets, where our young people are offered opportunities and also tour guides. And we have an exciting program that also links us with Namibia that we are piloting, where we ensure that we are able to standardize the kind of experience and service that we offer, whether you are in Namibia or in South Africa. So there's that program, which is an exchange program between our tour guides, but we also offer several other skills development for young people in various careers in the industry, and we are excited that now the industry also absorbs them after we offer them that training. But we have not stopped there with that. We have even gone more deeper to ensure that those who happen, we're also encouraging young people and young women who participate in the program to start their own businesses. To get in, we have a program that is dedicated so that they get into the value chain, they participate in tourism, and we give them the needed skills, market access, and also look into issues of funding so that there's maximum participation.
Thank you. And I was hoping Minister would talk about the exciting program between China and Russia, teaching the languages to young people. But more about that later. Namibia, We've heard exciting news about your tour guide standardization, so that if you accredited the accreditation is the same. Would you like to expand on that, and whether or not you have special programs for young women? Because we know whilst the industry, the majority of workers in the industry are women, how do we ensure that they rise up and they become executives, owners of products? If you'd like to comment on the gender challenge. And I think it's only appropriate that we have the men talk on this issue.
No, thank you very much. This is actually a very exciting question for me. In Namibia, we have what we call tourism is everyone's business. Tourism being, and that is where we want to approach, that is the point of departure. So that whoever, even if you are developing infrastructure, you have tourism in mind. If you are building a road and you are putting up signs, you have tourism in mind. If you are conceiving your curricula, academia that is, you have tourism industry needs in mind. It is that have taken us to the level of introducing Mandarin in our tertiary education. So that when you have the Chinese visitors visiting us, he will not have difficulties getting someone who is able to guide them and actually take them around, and so that they can feel at home, because that is something that we have not taken care of that much. And when you go to Europe, to China, you find many Europeans studying Mandarin, but in the past, where we are coming from, we were shunning, why studying Chinese? We are going to use it. What are we going to speak? Where are we going to speak it? All these kind of things. So it's one area that we have taken care of. And actually, we have what we call community-based natural resource management, which is a very big program, and is one program for which Namibia is lauded, where we want to conduct research and graduate also those small businesses to the next level, providing them with mentorship, providing them with finances, providing them with exposure, taking them out to trade fairs and all these type of things, and majority of them are women. And we have a minister of gender issues, women and something like that. Yeah. So what they do, even when you make appointments to the board, you have in parliament or in cabinet really to be on your toes, because they will never allow a board that is going to be appointed without being gender balanced.
And you're wearing the right colors, Deputy Minister, so we know you just missed that word, but it's the excitement of being on the panel. So we will get the full title of the Ministry of Gender. I'd like to turn to you now, our young minister. And we didn't really, you talked about the challenge of Ebola. So here is a classic case of a country needing to rebrand, a country needing to reposition itself. Share with us some of your challenges in the journey and lessons learned, and the kinds of cooperation that you require.
Thank you very much, Jane. I think it is very important that we are here talking about regional integration particularly, because I can say here with no hesitation that when Ebola struck, some of the countries that were first to isolate Sierra Leone were African countries. And then it got to a point when we had only 2 airlines that were still operating in the country, Air Maroc and Brussels Airlines. Had it not been for those 2, we would have been completely isolated from the rest of the world. So indeed, that was very difficult. So it is good that we are talking about regional integration, because even when we were isolated, the whole issue was addressed as an African issue. So many more countries were isolated from the rest of Europe, America, and Asia. So it is important that we must start addressing issues at regional level. It has been a challenge for us, which is why we had to re-strategize as a nation. When we came in, we did not so much focus right away on attracting international tourists. We first focused on developing domestic tourism, and that has been a success for us as a nation because most of our establishments were done by locals, and job markets improved by over 85% in the sector, and we are now the third largest revenue contributor to the country's GDP, even with the domestic tourism. So we did all of that whilst we focused on marketing and rebranding the country. But of course, it is always difficult. Yesterday we talked about the difficulty we have even telling our own stories. Even as we make strides to rebrand, to market, we still have stories being told that are as old as 20 years. You know, Sierra Leone is being branded as a country at war, even where the war has been ended for over 20 years. So we now have to do with rebranding, letting people know that we are no more a country of diseases such as Ebola, but we still have to also do even more to convince people that we are one of the most peaceful and stable nations in the world, and also no blood diamonds. So all of these are issues. So as we sit here talking about regional integration, we have to also start thinking about, you know, I spoke about Brand Africa yesterday. How can we really create Brand Africa as we struggle to market our individual countries? How can we create that platform for that to be easily done? And how can we also increase regional movement? You know, the whole issue of visa we talked about, but the marketing and rebranding issue is also important because whatever affects one African nation, it is taken as Africa generally. So whether it's Ebola in Sierra Leone or flooding somewhere in Guinea, it is Africa. So it is important that we are here talking about regional integration.
Great. So there's a practical example of when there is lack of regional integration, how the African continent does not then collectively ensure that there is protection of the whole of the continent. I'm now going to open up the floor, and I'm going to start with this section of the audience. I'll take 3 questions from this block, and if you have a specific minister that you wish to address your question to, you need to stipulate that. Could you then also just, don't give us your thesis on who you are, just who you are and which country you come from. Please. You noted? Number 1, I've had 1 hand. Number 2, I know that gentleman's from Nigeria. Don't ask me how I know it, but I do. And the lady with a beautiful green leaf on her sleeve. 3. You can start.
Thank you, Program Director. I'm Septi Pugula from South Africa. If I could just ask any of the ministers to comment, what is the difficulty in opening up travel in Africa? Why is it so hard? It is incredibly difficult to travel on the continent. Visas, the costs are high. Why is it so difficult?
Okay, there you have it. Pricing and policy.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Sam from Afrotourism, Nigeria. My question is regarding the borders, the land borders, especially West Africa, from Nigeria, Republic of Benin, Togo, all the way to Ghana. I'm not sure if any of the ministers are here, but just a general question of what are the ministers doing and the government doing to ensure that the borders are accessible? For example, you are going from Lagos to Accra and you spend the whole day. And it's supposed to be a 5-hour trip, but simply because of the bottlenecks, the bureaucracy, and the bribery and corruption going on along those borders. I don't know how it works in East Africa, but I think that on the West African coast can be addressed. So what is the government doing on border control on those areas? Thank you.
The questions are getting harder, ministers. I've been very kind to you. The audience isn't.
I am Dr. Asfour, Chair for the Comesta Business Council. Thank you very much for for fantastic interventions. I just would like to have a question for all the ministers. Everybody of you have mentioned that tourism is a growth inclusive business. It affects our women on the ground, our youth, our SMEs, our transport sector. It's a whole inclusive. How can you integrate tourism with the other ministries to make the visibility that tourism is really affecting SMEs development, the transport sector, the infrastructure, the youth on the ground, the rural women who are supplying the cultural industries with the handicrafts? We need to have a real new innovative approach with reference to integrating our tourism as a growth inclusive business with other ministries, affecting even SMEs. And as Minister from South Africa has said, it's also about how you go on the ground to make it visible for everybody on the ground. Another thing, I like the regional integration, and that's why in COMESA we have actually had now the handbook of integrating all COMESA region, the 19 countries, as one destination. So it's very important also to link with ECOWAS and the COMESA to see how Africa can be branded at one market destination with reference even to the Grand Africa Tour that AU will be going to launch tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm not going to nominate ministers to answer. Borders, visas, pricing, and then inclusive economic participation. You can take a stab at it. I've had one show of hands. Minister Kasa, sorry. My clicking is off today.
Let me start with the easier one.
No.
The last one. Just to share, for instance, our strategy in South Africa and how earlier on, as I was talking about our tourism sector strategy, how it integrates ourselves, government, taking leadership, industry driving, with community participation. We have one greatest example where we had visa regulations introduced in the country, and they created quite a lot of havoc for tourism in the country. Whilst on the one hand, it was more focusing on issues of safety and security and protocols that the country had to observe. And with discussions and pulling together all relevant ministers from the level of the presidency, the deputy president of the country was assigned to pull together all relevant ministers and work with the industry, all related sectors within the industry, because it was cutting across everybody. And I can tell you up to this stage, that matter continues to be a lesson of how government comes together and work with the industry. And such then ended up with the resolution of the matter. And up to now, we are continuing working on that. But as the National Department of Tourism, we also have a set of different departments that we sit together with. We even have formally signed memorandum of understanding. And in strategies where it comes to rural tourism, culture and heritage, township tourism, and all what we have identified, we are working with the respective ministers. So it's working very well, and it is assisting us because now, even in the interventions, our interventions are not just confined to tourism and hospitality. It's across the value chain because tourism is a catalyst for economic development. So it works very well. We have even a department of small business development. It coordinates all, therefore, your small businesses and then links up with all departments in government. If I may just talk about the issue of borders. I think what Minister Mzembe was making an example of these trans-frontier parks, it was part of government coming together with industry to say, let's use this as an experiment to see to what extent we can open borders and make sure the infrastructure that is required, because you'd find that infrastructure in the various other nodes in terms of even that very trans-frontier park would not be at the same level. So it helps the relevant or the respective countries to discuss, to share experiences, to improve on the products that are there, so that tourists, as they come to experience, they are able to get some standards in terms of what they are looking for. So we continue to work on that and build on it. The Regional Tourism Organization at the SADC level is best example where tourism ministers have come together. They are working on a program in identifying areas where we can work together, and our marketing bodies are working together. They are part of the structure to ensure that we can identify areas of working together and build on and grow more in terms of us opening borders, and also encouraging that we do the same in all the other regions. And lastly, when it comes to opening travel in Africa, indeed it's everybody's challenge. We're looking into how the infrastructure can be improved. Infrastructure remains an issue, connecting our countries. Fortunately, at the African Union level, that is being integrated and is even given a champion to ensure that we can look into infrastructure that connects our countries, and also looking into how we can, be it our land borders, we are able to make work easy. It continues to be an issue, the fact that at the highest level, at heads of state level, there must also be that kind of political will that is demonstrated, because countries continue to protect their sovereignty, and at times tourism would take a lower stage. And as we were discussing yesterday, you were saying at AU level, we want tourism to take a center stage, to be in the agenda at that level, so that we are able, as we say, Africa is the next gold. And economy in Africa depends on tourism, that at that level, that it can be prioritized, and these kinds of issues are made to be priority. Thank you very much.
Minister Mzembe and Dr. Mutala, I know you want to weigh in here. So I'd like you to also address the issue of, whilst national sovereignty is a key issue, often those policies that come in as a result of geopolitical pressure has an unintended consequence for tourism. So how do you manage and mitigate an imperative in one area of government that does not then erode the value of another industry or another area? If the two of you could comment on that. I've noted you, Minister Tunis, as well.
I think one of the tragedies of this sector, the travel and tourism sector, is that economic planners, they miss it in their budget assumptions, to the extent that if a sector is number 3 global export earner, beating even foodstuffs and automobiles in terms of exports revenue, earning capacity, and you miss it in your budget assumptions at national level, it means that the people sitting in front here have not been able to put forward compelling arguments in very simplified language that brings everybody to the table. I see it to the extent that this sector is misunderstood only to represent the interests of the rich and people who can afford, class people. So we need to redefine it to a point where it is seen as an inclusive product that empowers the broad generality of our society, from the youth to the women. And how do we do that? We can't do it if we can't measure it. We can't do it if we're unable to share statistics that compel our presidents, people sitting in cabinets, to understand that this sector is a capacity in the first instance to generate employment. You raised the question of how can we create jobs out of this sector. Every time that we talk about tourism, we make some very serious claims about 1 in every 11 jobs being in tourism. So tourism today employs 300 million jobs. But do our systems, our governments understand that these 1 in 11 jobs can also be created in our own home governments, in our own provinces, in our own companies? So I think it's simplifying the vision to the extent where we can carry everybody along, and then we'll win this argument going forward. Just look at Executive Order number 1 in the United States, for example. If you take this debate out of Africa, it was banning travel, essentially. It was banning tourism, but it was an economic argument, counter-argument made to number 45 in the United States, to the extent where you would understand that $181 million worth of travel income was lost in month 1 due to that decision. The jobs that were being made arguments for, to say that we don't want to continue exporting jobs, are actually generated by this sector to the extent where they were also undermined by those decisions. So I think we haven't gotten to a stage where we have put our arguments in a very simplified way which can be understood and can carry along other stakeholders so that they can facilitate this sector.
Yeah, but I think the audience is still begging the question, why would it take, and I know on Beit Bridge and some of the land border posts, there has been some easing of traffic because, you know, a worker going home over Christmas is also a potential consumer of a local tourism product, so that the visiting family and relatives metric in tourism has to be turned into how do you add on a bungee jump? How do you add on a visit to another booth where you take a trip on the river? So Dr. Mutala, if you could talk too, again, if we were to present the statistics here today in terms of border time crossing, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, today, what has been done to increase that access of land border? Yes, when the international tourists complain around queues at the airports and visa, there is a response. But when someone coming from Ghana wants to go to Sierra Leone or may want to go to Mozambique, I don't know if they heard. So what is the response to easing this cross-border travel? And we don't want more Walmart on Beit Bridge and in Goma and all these. I have nothing against it. Could be Pick and Pay, it could be ShopRite Checkers. But that's not the answer to keep people shopping in their own destination. We are a continent of travelers, but we're making it difficult for us to even know each other because with the time comes the harassment, comes the extortion of bribes. Sorry.
Yeah, I think that discussion for me should be really held at a higher level. I think I see issues of insecurity, issues of costs, simple examples of the visa. How much does the visa cost going that way or coming back the other way? Even amongst ourselves, even as we desire to have regional collaboration, have the uni visa, for instance, for the 5 countries. There have been discussions of, okay, you are charging so much for your visa, and your visa is free. So which one are we going to take? When we get the uni visa across all 5 countries, is it going to be free, or is it going to be $50, or is it going to be $20? So there are those issues of cost, there are issues of security, there were issues of, okay, how safe are we? Allowing people enter through Angola and go around through the 5 countries. But the discussion also should be, if Angola would have allowed that person enter their country, our assumption is that they went through some security. So meaning that unless we are undermining the security of the other country. So those are the issues that we need to sit down together and discuss, whether it's at a presidential level, whether it is at ministerial level, but we need to discuss those things. And I think because we have, almost avoided them, we have failed to come to an agreement. So as a result, now there are challenges. Our people can't cross borders that easily.
Mm-hmm. And it's not the elephant in the park, it's actually the elephant in the room. Sierra Leone, I wonder if you could address the last question around your economy, women in rural areas, women as crafters? How are you ensuring that they enter supply chains and that their goods and services are priced at an appropriate unit price point?
Thank you very much. Tourism itself, as you know, is multi-sectorial. And so we had a focus, when we came in as a new team, speaking to the broader development agenda of the government, the agenda for prosperity, and also the mandate that we have focusing on specific areas, economic growth and revenue generation, job creation, especially for young people and women, and so on and so forth. And so what we did was actually focus on bringing other sectors on board. The private sector was a huge part. We leveraged on the private sector and then created a link between the private sector and other ministries, departments, and agencies that have something to do with tourism. We created what we call the Tourism Think Tank, and also empowered the National Tourism Board to expand more in other parts of the country. So, to answer your question specifically, for example, we worked with the Ministry of Trade and Industry to create a concept we called Made in Sierra Leone. The Made in Sierra Leone concept was pretty much to empower those indigenous entrepreneurs who are probably trading in most of the things that are imported into our country. We realized that 80 to 90% of the products that we use in Sierra Leone are imported, including even furniture in office buildings. And so we thought to ourselves that this is not good for a nation that wants to develop its economy. So we immediately introduced the Made in Sierra Leone to create a platform for our local products to have the opportunity to compete with those that are imported. But of course, giving preference to the local products. And that is working very well for us. And also for us in the tourism industry, we focused on ecotourism. And the reason why we did that was most of our attractions were in the rural areas. So for us to be able to reduce poverty in rural areas, we needed to bring development to those areas using ecotourism. So now, for example, if you go to a local village, you build ecologies, you have automatically created a market for someone doing fruits in those areas, vegetable in those areas. And these are mainly areas that women in the rural communities are involved with. So we are creating the ready market for them, and, increasing their earnings and at the same time reducing poverty. And this is supported by the government's, cash incentives programs that they introduced, the social safety nets. So the social safety net is used to support these women to improve the standards of their products so that they are able to compete with those that are imported. So these are all the areas that we have intervened using other MDAs. But going further, I also wanted, if you can give me some time to talk about
I'm going to give you a little bit of time. Can we prepare for questions on that side, please? The microphones. Continue.
I really wanted to talk about the border issues. It is very much important now that we are talking about regional integration. For us in Sierra Leone, we are bordered by land with Guinea and Liberia. And we created what we call the Mano River Union. That has been in existence for years, and then now Ivory Coast is part. Within the Mano River Union, we have free trade and free movement of goods and people, within that region. But that has also been extended to ECOWAS as a whole. Within the 15 countries of ECOWAS, you don't need visa. You can travel to any ECOWAS country, and you are also free to trade in any ECOWAS country. You can move your goods from one ECOWAS country to another. And At our borders, not only do we have the presence of immigration, we also have the presence of the Anti-Corruption Commission to address some of the issues that you raised, people being harassed at borders to pay extras for goods and services, for example. So these are all interventions that we have done to ensure that we free up trade among these countries.
Ministers, we feel the onerous task that you have in terms of your own peers and your own colleagues in terms of moving these challenges forward. I have recognized 3 people on this side, the gentleman with the tie, with the grey hair, and then the gentleman with the tie with no hair, if I'm allowed to say that, and then the lady in the white jacket with a lot of hair. And I'm not profiling you, it's just so that the microphone can find you. That's the first 3. I have noted you at the back as well. In fact, I'll take 2 gentlemen and 2 ladies on this side. And then panelists, the longer you take, the less opportunity there is for the audience. So if we can cooperate, if we can integrate with each other. And Deputy Minister, you're going to answer the first question, whatever the question is. I've noted your desire to respond, and Cape Verde. So whatever the questions are, those will be the answers to start with. Okay, the gentleman here with the grey hair.
Good afternoon. Thanks for all the panels. And my name is Muhammad Zaki. I'm from Los Angeles, California, and I'm the so-called ATA board member also in Los Angeles. My question is quite one of the same thing for the visa problem. Can we come up an idea to making like one visa for entire Africa? So anybody can apply online and have visa problems solved immediately, not to waiting in the line at the airports. Especially some countries, I want to name for Nigeria, is a pain in the head. So can you, because you are the ministers, you have the powers and you have things, can decide and come up an idea and sit down and talk and make one fees, one things online to solve the problems, to bring the tourism plus the investors in the particular countries. So they can invest in your country and make some more jobs and more things to be facilitated.
I'm going to protect the panel and counter question to you. If you give us a visa free to enter America, we'll take this one on. Thank you.
We can try.
Next question, please. Next question, please. I'm protecting my panel because that's a serious ask. Not to say that it's impossible, but it's a serious ask, and it has to be quid pro quo. I'm not a politician, so I can say these things.
Okay, thank you very much. I think I'm the one without the ear. All right, I like it this way. Thank you very much. The question I have is also on regional cooperation. When we were young, the tougher ones pick up the weak ones. In Africa, we do have 2 main economies, South Africa and Nigeria. These are, when we talk about the economy, they are the strongest in Africa. But we see little or absolutely no progress in helping the weaker ones in terms of investment in those countries, which could help tourism development. For instance, we are very close to Nigeria when you talk of West Africa, and Nigeria has a whole lot of rich people, but they don't think of investing within West Africa. Instead, they will decide to invest in Europe. I see similar things happening in South Africa, and if I hurt anybody, I'm sorry. But if these countries should only pick up the heavy burden to invest in these other countries, I think there is going to be development. So how will this help in regional participation in terms of tourism? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, the lady with the white jacket, you next, and then the other lady sort of toward, yeah, I've noted you. If the microphone can go to the next hand. Done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Shuli Adebolu. I'm from Lagos State Government in Nigeria. My question really centers around, and it can be answered by any of the respectable ministers, centers around infrastructure development and development of your tourism assets and products. Now, I've heard a lot today being said about in terms of promoting domestic tourism, etc., and intra-Africa travel and all that kind of stuff. But essentially, the money and the financing that's going to drive this industry, it's not necessarily going to come from within Africa. What are we doing as governments to ensure that we're looking for the right kind of investment to be driven into the sector, and then the level of effort we're also making for investor readiness to make our products and our tourism assets competitive across the globe? Because we know what we're faced against, yeah? If I have an investor who has investment dollars to invest in tourism and the type of tourism assets, competitiveness is a very serious edge. So what's going to make us compel them to come and invest their tourism dollars in Africa, and how are we ensuring that we're investment ready?
Thank you. And then the last question, and I'll hand it over to the panel.
Thank you. I am Violet Odala from ECPAT International. And last year we launched a report on, which is a global study on sexual exploitation of children in travel and tourism, which reveals that as much as tourism is key for economic growth, it also portends several risks for children, such as sexual exploitation, because of various factors such as anonymity of the travelers in the places that they travel to, and the advantage that they have over the children that they meet in the areas that they visit, whether we're talking about domestic or international travelers as well. So I just want to find out from the honorable ministers what mechanisms have been put in place in your countries to ensure that tourism is also safe for children, and if you can provide positive examples of policies that have been adopted in your countries so to ensure that children are protected from sexual exploitation as much within the tourism and travel sector. Thank you.
Honourable Minister, Deputy Minister Nambahu, if you could answer all of the questions or two of them. And I'm not censoring even the question around if we dream of the impossible, then eventually it is done. So the question around one visa for Africa, it's part of the... So over to you. And next, Cape Verde, if you could also then chip in, please.
No, thank you very much. The question about visas, I'm a lawyer by profession and training and practice. When we were in justice, the people in justice, they are concerned about crime. They are concerned about transboundary, crime and smuggling, contraband, if you like. So the people in the security sector are concerned about the security of the country. So unless you have all these people on the same table, you will have difficulties solving this kind of questions. And it bounced back to the issue of mainstreaming of tourism and actually educating those that make the decisions, so that they are actually making informed decisions, and also with everybody with a chair on the planning table. As long as we remain far from that, we will have difficulties, because it boils down to people not trusting each other's systems. That's why even, I think, in other developed countries, the issue of terrorism caught them unprepared, without a proper strategy how to address that. And if they have systems in place and they were caught unprepared with that. So this might be somehow unpopular, this might be somehow not what you would want to hear from a minister responsible for tourism, but this is the reality. And if we can come to the level where we have everybody, security agency, tourism, and everybody else on the same table and grapple with this kind of issues, we'll be able to handle this. And if obviously also the people at the customs and all that, we are trying to sensitize them, educate them on the importance of tourism, so that we don't have unnecessary people being withheld at borders and questioned and asked unnecessary questions, or being harassed. What are you looking for here? Or, this kind of thing. And it boils down also to perceptions. So that is my take. On the protection of children, in my country, the Ministry of Women, and it continues changing names. That's why sometimes, you lose count. and I don't want to lose elections. I would definitely say it's how it is supposed to be, because they are very, very strong. Very, very strong. Believe you me. It is called Gender Equality and Child Protection. And they are the people who are on the lookout to see to it that children are protected. Whatever you do, whether it's in your employment, whether you are employing people underage, or you are actually, even marriage, this marriage that are underage, they are actually tasked, because it has been recognized as a problem. Even in your employment, they are really on the lookout and keep us on their toes. Yeah. And when it comes to inclusivity, we even go to the level, because for you to understand where we are coming from, you have to understand the background. We had apartheid. Let's always have that in the back of our mind. And when you had apartheid, you have people that have advanced ahead of others on the basis of preferred and preferential treatment. And that was institutionalized, and that was also in laws. So you have then to put up mechanism, even the procurement and tendering process. You have to have a checklist. How much of percentage of your shareholding is indigenous? How many of your shareholders are women, for example, or are youth? That's why we have to have a standalone ministry called Gender Equality and Child Protection, or welfare. So these are some of the mechanisms. And it goes down even because I keep on saying, people are not coming to our countries to visit central government. They have to visit cities. And those cities, do they have charters? Do they have tourist-friendly arrangements so that they can really take care of their tourists? And also, these things of inclusive government is taking place there. So we make sure that one triggers down from the central, middle, and local government.
Great. Minister Gonzalez, if you could just talk to investor, your experience around investor relations and bankability of projects, and share some of your learnings.
Yeah, I think the question was certainly infrastructure, and how that really supports tourism development. I think in terms of infrastructure, we need to look at basic infrastructure, for example, ports, airports, roads, and then we have to look at water, power, sanitation. All these are pretty much in the public domain. So I think the question is, where's the funds come from? It's certainly not within Africa. It has to be, other than maybe African Development Bank, the World Bank and regional banks and so forth. Usually private investors don't galvanize toward this basic infrastructure. But in addition to that, also there's the social infrastructure, the housing, the schools, the hospitals, and all that really supports tourism. I think the question is really, and then you can granulate further in terms of development of resorts and access and so forth and so on. These where private sectors then become more active. It's a major challenge because you're talking about the enormous investments. For example, this facility we're in, this is a major tourism infrastructure investment. We need more across the continent. But it is a major challenge because most African countries are highly indebted. And so to be able to actually have access to funds to develop infrastructure is an enormous challenge. But I think that there are new opportunities. I think we see in the African continent with countries, for example, such as China, which has been a major player in helping to bring infrastructure, to help infrastructure development. We see shining examples of Ethiopia which were there not long ago to see all the major investments and how really the country has been faster developing this area. So, you know, infrastructure development is really major. Because once this has been, the underpinning has been laid out, then the private investor come in, for example, in terms of foreign direct investment and the endogenous investment as well. And I think here's the question why Africans don't invest in Africa. We need to have more of that. Of course, all investors look to diversify their portfolio so that they want to put some in emerging market. You don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, but they'll want to get more mature market to basically counterbalance that. But we need really to see a lot more of the African cross-border. And I think also it's symptomatic that we don't have more because there's limited travel across border. It's very difficult to go from one country to the other. So money flows as people flow. So I think as we break through the question of mobility from one country to the other, also we'll have more, flow of funds to be able to invest. And let me just touch on the point of the question of the visa. I think the one visa, I'm glad that Madam Ambassador Kwao is here from African Union. And she will take this issue, I'm sure, to the member states. We have 55 nation states in Africa. So it's really a question of...
No, we are not going to enter dialogue, Ambassador,
yes.
Minister. If you could conclude on the point.
The question is that, so the issue is, one visa, for example, in Europe, we see it that it's moved toward that. In that you have one visa to enter one country in all the Schengen, then you can travel country to country based on that one visa. In some regions in Africa, here as my colleague minister mentioned, for example, there's some in the ECOWAS region, for those member states, they can move freely with visa exemption. But within economic blocks, you have to have visas. I'm glad to know that countries such as Rwanda have visa upon arrival. The issue, Cabo Verde, for example, is taking a very extreme approach, which is going toward visa exemption for the tourism source market. But there are others that are very cryptic in how to get to the country. But I think visa upon arrival, and certainly the technology to leverage the online visa application might be one way, certainly to control and to be able to have access to visa. But mobility and access is fundamental.
Follow the money. I like that. Money flows where people go, or where people go where the money is, and that's why we had the gold rush and all of these other highlights in our revolutions around economies. All good things, unfortunately, must come to an end. And I'm going to ask each minister on the panel to wrap up in 30 seconds and maybe talk about, maybe in 30 seconds, sum up what is your single biggest goal for your tourism portfolio in your country. 30 seconds. What is what we call the big audacious goal? What do you want? It can be around tourist arrivals, money flows, etc. 30 seconds, and I'm going to cut you after 30 seconds. So we'll start with Zimbabwe.
The Zimbabwean tourism philosophy, the 4 Gs of tourism: get them in, get their money, get them out, get them back. Wow. I thank you.
Thank you, Minister Mzembe. Next, Dr. Mutale. You can have his other 10 seconds.
Okay. Thank you. For us, we are working hard to become the 5th destination of choice in Africa by 2030. We are focusing on domestic tourism, the MICE industry, and the development of tourism destinations around the country. Thank you.
Thank you. Minister Gonzalez, sorry.
Our main goal is to ensure a safe, secure, and healthy environment for tourists.
Wow, thank you, thank you. Deputy Minister Nambao?
For us, it's transformation. For us, tourism is everyone's business. Okay. For us, it's transformation. Is making tourism everyone's business. Is tourism contributing to nation building, and is mainstreaming tourism so that it contributes and is seen as one of the pillars of the economy, and actually linking it to the environment, because we conserve also for future generations.
Thank you. Minister Tunis.
The UN WTO rated Sierra Leone as the fastest growing destination for 2016 because we were able to increase our international arrivals by over 300%. We want to be able to maintain that position by adding on those numbers and ensuring that it translates to the revenue generation and economic growth of our country.
Thank you. Honourable Minister Klasa.
Mine is to see tourism taking its central place within the economic sectors, and that these ministers here must strive to ensure that it does, and that Africa must invest in Africa and invest in its people through skills and infrastructure, and build more partnerships that open people to partner in such investments across borders.
Thank you. Honourable Ministers, to you in the audience, thank you so much for giving of your time and listening. And I want to leave you with this idea, that Africans are leaving their fields but not flowing into factories nor mines. It is easy to buy a Rolex in Uganda, albeit not one that will tell the time. It's sold at ubiquitous roadside stalls, the Ugandan Rolex, and every country has them. In my country, we call them a kota. It's a half a loaf of bread, a piece of egg, and some sausage. In Uganda, it is an omelette wrapped in chapati, and they call them roll eggs. So as we learn from our neighbors and as we seek to transform our tourism value products, let me leave you with this thought, that structural change is more than factories. And maybe too, as tourists come to our beaches and our gorillas and the Nile, we can even promote the non-edible Rolex to tourists. We will craft our own journey, we will be in charge of our narrative, and we'll happily eat unhealthy foods, because when the tourists come, they enjoy that too. Thank you.
Thanks, Judy.
Ladies and gentlemen, please, I have a few announcements to make.
Ibyo rero nyine byari bikuribiye muri iyi inama yari irimo kubera hano muri Kigali Convention Center muri KCC, aho bari barimo kurebera hamwe muri rusange uburyo ubukerarugendo bwatezwa imbere, ariko nk'uko twabyumvise by'umwihariko no kureba uburyo ubukerarugendo bwarushaho gutezwa imbere ku mugabane wa Afrika, kuko bavugaga yuko uyu mugabane wa Afrika ufite ba mukerarugendo benshi, akaba ari nabo nyine banakwiriye no kugira uruhare mu guteza imbere uyu mugabane, bakorera ubukerarugendo bwabo muri uyu mugabane wa Afrika, kubera ko akenshi ubundi usanga bagirira izo ngendo hirya no hino atari hano ku mugabane wa Afrika. Akaba ariyo mpamvu rero nyine basabwaga kuyikora buriya bukerarugendo, ariko bakabukorera ku mugabane wa Afrika kugira ngo barusheho nyine guteza imbere ubu bukerarugendo. Ikindi bakanagira n'uruhare no kugaragaza ibyiza, bakagira uruhare mu kugaragaza ibyiza biri ku mugabane wa Afrika, ubwiza nyaburanga bw'umugabane